Potter.
Here.
Jim Lozinski.
Here.
And Karen Gale is not in attendance. We do have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Are we online or?
We are on air.
Oh, we are on air. Okay, thank you. First item, resolution to approve the items and conditions of development agreement between the Community Development Authority and the Mandel Group for the market development south of National, SONA.
We have to do the minutes first.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Yeah. Can I have a motion to...
Motion to approve? Second.
Any additions to the minutes? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes stand approved. Now we'll go to item 2 that I've just read. Patrick, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Tonight, Sean and I are going to outline the framework of a development agreement that we have relative to the development of SONA, which is the southern, around 5 acres of land, or almost 6 acres of land, west of the farmers market. This is an area that's we've been working with Mandel Group to develop. They've outlined some development plans, and you might have gone by the site recently. At the last CDA meeting, we granted access to the site to start grading and getting it ready for development, and the developer has commenced with those activities. This is, again, just southwest of the West apartment building, which is the 177-unit building that was completed in 2020, and it has received, I believe, 100% occupancy and rents that are above where we set up with the original development agreement. So tonight we're discussing the construction of SONA Loft. So this is a 110-unit apartment building with around 5,000 square feet of commercial space or in-cap space. You can kind of see that in the brown area of the left side of the building here, and then there's another in-cap at the southern portion of the building. Where we're at in terms of the project. So site work has commenced, as I outlined. The environmental aspect of the project, in which the CDA in prior meetings have awarded $500,000 as an EPA revolving loan, which this is part of the framework of financing of the deal. We have to do a public comment period. We're ready to start that part of the process. Prior to tonight's meeting, I shared a synopsis of a development agreement terms that was shared with the authority. We're going to go over some of those provisions here tonight. This is just the agreement for SONA. This is not the Makers Row aspect. It does draw down land, lots 1 and 3, and we'll go over that here in a second, what those are. But this is really relative to construction on lot 2 of the development site. We've gone through the performas. We've had Ellers review a TIF model. A unique comment that came from SB Freeman is that the rates of return are reasonable. The project is in an opportunity zone, which provides benefits to equity investors to the project. You might recall that legislation was passed a few years ago under tax reform, in which it allowed people to invest their capital gains in a project and not get the tax effects on that capital gains. Overall, what this project will do is add 5 more years to the TIF beyond what where Nona's position at in terms of the MRO commitment that we had in that particular project. So we are using the full statutory limit of the TIF, which is around 27 years. And we continue to work with Higgins on easement access and a lateral issue, which we'll highlight on another agenda item this evening. So overall, it's a $23 million construction. Overall, it'll have around a $19 million value with Makers Row and the SONA project. And this is the outline of the site. What you see in the light blue, which is the apartment building, is lot 2. Lot 1 is in the closest to the farmers market, and lot 3 is south of the farmers market parcel, and lot 4. So tonight's discussion is really getting the infrastructure work in the site plan or pads for lot 1 and 2, and then the parking areas and the access points, and getting lot 4 situated with infrastructure as well. The developer will not draw down lot 4, so the CDA will own lot 4, but the developer will have rights over lot 4, which is over for a period of time, in which point they would like to consult on what development would go there. If that time expires, then the CDA can market to other types of complementary uses for the development. As in prior development sites with the West, we did sell the land for $1. This site would be sold for $1 as well, so lots 1, 2, and 3. And again, CDA retains the rights to lot 4. The site development work, this is a big aspect to the project. So if you're familiar with development like an industrial park, we're getting pads ready for different phases of the project under the SONA development. So the stormwater collection system is being installed, the ingress and egress points are being installed, parking, et cetera, lighting, sidewalks, landscaping, et cetera. That work is starting right now with the developer using Payne and Dolan or Wallback Group to do that work. There will be a reciprocal easement agreement for the maintenance of the infrastructure, so who's shoveling the sidewalks. Each phases of those areas will be responsible for paying some of the costs associated with the stormwater and those particular items. So the overall budget for this is around $1.8 million. I would just want to note that on the base lot 4, you see $364,653, as well as some contingency. What that relates to, or total of $415,000, is the infrastructure necessary to get lot 4 in place to be developed, and that is an obligation of the CDAs to help contribute towards that. And we're going to talk about how that gets financed here a little bit later. Do you want to go to the next one?
So, Patrick had mentioned Lot 4. The way that we're looking to set that up is that Mandel Group would loan the CDA the $364,000 to cover the costs needed to put the infrastructure in, and they would be putting that infrastructure in as they continue to work on the site. As you've probably seen some dirt moving around and things like that right now. The Lot 4 is actually where the stormwater pond will be located as well. And so it's an important site for the remainder of the lots. The way that would be set up is that if cost savings are realized on the SONA project itself, the loan would be reduced by the CDA's portion. So basically, if there's a cost savings realized once they go through the SONA project, we will get a portion of that, but it's going to be put towards essentially that loan that Mandel has given to us to put in the infrastructure for Lot 4.
Otherwise, we would have to borrow those funds up front to pay for that, and this is a way that we thought it was convenient to help facilitate the development.
And then if there are no cost savings, so for example on the West project, we received we had a cost savings provision in there, and we received like $650,000 of cost savings when the project was complete. So we certainly hope there are cost savings, but on this project as well. But if there aren't, it would basically be the loan will get tacked onto Lot 4, and it would just be kind of a mortgage on Lot 4 at 3, a little bit of a higher interest rate at 3% interest. So. As far as parking goes for the site, obviously, one of the big things is the farmers market. The big reason for the development in the area is the attraction of the farmers market, and so we want to make sure that it's protected and will carry on, for a long time. Along with that, it's important for Mandel as well, as it's a destination for people all over the region. So one thing that we're looking at is there will just be a number of stalls which won't have restrictions on them. So, just think about if you were to pull into a grocery store parking lot and park your car. It will just be like that. There won't be a sign that says you can't park there during the farmers market or anything like that. So it'll be unrestricted parking. There'll be a number of stalls unrestricted that will be shared for farmers market users to be able to park. There'll be, the street parking will kind of be as is currently today, which is heavily used by users at the market as well. So.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
a question. When this site is fully developed, will there be adequate parking for the farmers market?
Yeah, we have actually studied that. We analyzed a number of markets in the region and looked at the number of stalls that we'll be able to share with the Mandel Group on this site, and the number of stalls in the area that can be parked there by the public. There's There are a few other parking lots that can be parked in as well, including on-site parking. And we've determined that, yeah, we have more parking stalls available here than many of the other markets in the region.
So in terms of public financing, we started from the ground up here and how we're doing this with the infrastructure, now in the overall deal framework. It is a developer-funded TIF in which, through the course of the project, the increment that is gained from the Sona apartment development, as well as extra increment that is gained off of the West development and the Aurora Clinic, will be utilized to help finance the Sona overall project. So the total MRO participation is estimated around $15,725,000. Then there's the EPA $500,000 loan at 1.5% interest over a 20-year term. So this is funds that were granted to the city to loan out towards brownfield redevelopment type of initiatives. We talked about the developer financing for Lot 4 infrastructure. And then we have two pretty big important agreement provisions that are cost savings, as we outlined. So we get a percentage, and we're going to go over these in a little bit detail. And then the profit sharing, so the upside of the project. How do we participate in the upside of the project? So if we look at the revenues that go into the TIF district, so we worked with Ellers to prepare a TIF model. And what has gone into the TIF district is really money's gained from investment into the West from fire. So the CDA took out a note, and we took around $6.7 million and invested that into the West project. And then based on the loans and participation of that agreement, we received certain funds back. So we've received $1.5 million on the development loan repayment from the West project, construction savings of $665, and another $1.5 million in profit sharing that is put into the TIF fund currently. That is set to go back to fire. The way that was structured, except for the $665. That went into the TIF fund. That was because of just construction savings on the project. And fire said the city or CDA can have that. Then you see the $500,000 there. That is a borrowing from the $3 million that I just talked about from fire's funds. And I'm going to show another side of this here in a second, to keep a fund balance within the TIF. So our TIF doesn't go negative based on the MRO payments that we're providing to the developer. And then there's still a profit sharing aspect of $1 million that's available when all the West is completed and to go through like a sale in the future. There's a potential upside on the profit sharing yet. And we've gone through those development terms on prior meetings and agreements. So as I talked about on the left here, you can see the $6.7 million that went towards Nona. And then on the next is the MRO payments that are obligated to the original development agreement that we have for the West, and that's around $16.7 million. So that is still part of the West within the TIF. But the West is performing well, and I'm going to talk about that here shortly. So Sona, if that gets built in the projected increments gained from Sona, so the taxes generated by the $19 million apartment building, is around $9,530,000 and some change. That is the increment gained from Sona. So that's where we're saying, as you perform, you can get access to that increment. And then from Nona, there is a portion of increment that's beyond what's already committed into the 16.7 that we're committing to the Sona project. And then once that 16.7 is satisfied, there is increment available to help Sona. So it's kind of a backloaded type of project. If you look here, you can go from 81,000 and it goes up to $1 million in the later years. And that's put into the structure. In that, in total, the column of MRO assistance around $15.7 million, developer-funded TIF that would be available to the project. On the right here, under, can I have the mouse? The TIF pays back the $2.5 million of the $3 million, as I mentioned before, to fire when we proceed with the development agreement. And then $500,000 is kept in here to maintain a fund balance within the TIF. And then in later years, fire is repaid back most of the $6.7 million that was lent to the Nona project. So this is in later years of the TIF. There's no obligation that if this goes south, that fire, we're going to hold that to fire. It's only if there's increment available. So this increment is showing that there is an increment available to pay fire, and we TIF off within 7 years. So fire would receive $8.7 million back of that's with interest for the 6.7 that was borrowed. So the framework of the deal: the land is sold for $1. It has around a $1.7 million value in terms of land value today. Developer-funded TIF structure is around $8 million net present value for the $15.7 million. The infrastructure costs would be put into a loan. You can see there's a little bit dollar difference here, and that's related to 2,000 square feet of land that is part of the Higgins easement deal. So if we sell the land to Higgins, that nets out from this total amount of land or infrastructure cost because that would get absorbed by that cost. So in the cost savings agreement, the first 364 will pay off will pay off the funding necessary to do the infrastructure. My dollar amounts have changed here since I've done this, but the next 100,000 will go to reserve for the developer. That's a capital reserve, so that's money that goes into carpet or other improvements into the apartment development. And then there's a 50-50 split over that between the CDA or city and the developer. The refinancing, so once the development is complete, sort of like what happened on the west, they went to permanent financing early because they got occupied quick and they were able to get a lower interest rate, and there was some ability to put money towards the development or to pay off the city, and that's the $1.5 million or so that we had talked about earlier. The refinancing is the first $500,000 is paid to the city, and that's really to help pay back that fire note that is borrowed to keep the fund balance within the TIF. So we can get fire back, and now we have money back in the TIF fund. And then the profit sharing is structured that the remaining proceeds are 25% to the CDA and 75% to the developer. Now this is lower than where we were on the west, but our level of public participation is lower on Sona. We had much upfront money that went into the west deal, and so we were asked for 60-40 split. So this particular split is reduced. And if we get the $500,000 paid out early, then our 25% goes down to 15%. At the last meeting, this was around 15% and 8%. So we've gone up, and that's why it's blue. And we talked about trying to get a little higher on the backside. This is going to operate differently than the west. At the west, when we started a market rate lease rate was around $1.50. Now this one is around $1.70. So the market is going to hit a certain point eventually in a particular deal. So is it going to perform as fast and as well as the west? Hopefully, but it may not be to that same level. The EPA amount of money, we talked about those terms. The Higgins, the land sale, the sale price is 38.108, and that's to go against the 415 that we talked about earlier. And then there's the 500,000 that has to be repaid to fire for the total $3 million balance that is owed to fire currently. In the end, we had SB Freeman through the process in terms of reviewing the pro forma. We've had Ellers review the TIF structure as well, going over projections. At the end, this is an estimate projection. We don't know where taxes are going or values are going, but we're doing our best to project out the future. SB Freeman reviewed it and thought the assumptions were reasonable within market in terms of construction costs and the rents, etc. The Mandel's pro forma has an IRR, a calculation of 11 to 13. That's reasonable. It's not as high as some developers usually want to see, but the idea here is that we're working with Mandel to come up with the best solution to get the deal going. Overall, they thought the structure was different and better than originally proposed because there was upfront money in the original layout of the project, as we've been outlining to the CDA. In this particular case, we went just purely developer-funded TIF. Excuse me. Sean, you want to do this one?
This is just shows you sort of the difference in assistance that's required for this project than what was required for the west across the street. So you can kind of see that bottom line is the west was 177 units and required about $16 million, and this is 110 units and it comes out at about $9.2 million. The reason that might not add up as you go down the line is that the MRO has a you can see the note on the bottom has a discounted value. So because the MRO is released over 20 years, it has a net present value much lower than the total than when you total it. So that 15.7 is closer to $7 to $8 million depending upon what rate you put on it, and that the 16.9 on the west is in that $9 to $10 million range. So it's just to show that even though construction costs have gone up quite a bit for developments like this, we're still able to put in less dollars and get a quality project out of it, and to show that we don't have to put in as much as we did just a few years ago.
And the other unique thing in this particular situation is that we're putting in a lot more of the infrastructure for parcels that aren't developed yet, whether it's Lot 4, Lot 1, and 3. It'll be coming, but this deal is kind of fronting that money to get that all laid out for development. That pretty much summarizes the development agreement. I'd gladly answer any questions that the authority may have or members of the audience.
Mr. Clark?
Mr. Chair, Patrick, yesterday afternoon you sent out an email called the Mandel Development Deal Terms to all of us and I guess the rest of the city. In that email, at the bottom of page 1, you included a SB Friedman letter.
It was an email that they sent to me. Yeah. It was an email that they sent.
Oh, okay.
I summarized it
And
in the email.
it's the last sentence of that Friedman piece that I don't understand. Quote, the amount of assistance required for the deal is related to the mismatch between the cost of developing the project and achieving rents and achievable rents, dash, and here's to me the confusion. The rents are unable to support this type of project and the site improvements needed to facilitate developments. Is Friedman saying the rents as they anticipate are not able to support this development?
No, that's not what they're saying. It's just that the market rent where we're at today and the cost of construction and the upfront cost to do the infrastructure is higher than the market rate interest or the rent. And I know the developers here, and you probably can share some perspective on that. But we're at $1.70 in this particular deal, and the actual cost for these things would be over $2. Probably a square foot for rent, and we're not in that in terms of a market today. Could that be in the future? Yes, but what they're saying is that those costs are much higher, and therefore it requires the public assistance to help underwrite the project.
So if the $1.70, what does that translate into relative to rent?
So if you had a 1,000 square foot apartment, it'd be around $1,700.
And what will it be here? What's the average square footage? 1,000?
I think it's around 1,900, a little bit smaller.
It's about 775 square feet on average. So the average rents that we're trying to hit are in the range of probably about $1,200 a month because they're smaller units. So first of all, if I could add, what they're trying to say is, without this type of participation, you as a private developer couldn't go out and raise the equity or get the loan because it wouldn't make economic sense without this public-private structure. So I think that's what they're actually saying in their letter. When that's kind of satisfying what's known as the but-for statement. But for the city's involvement, the development won't proceed. When they say the rents are too low, well, I guess that you could say one of three things. The costs are too high, the rents are too low, or the expenses are too high. You could say any of the three, But what's normally focused on is which one of those three is a little out of whack with the norm. And, we actually got really, we did a lot of work to get good pricing on this job. So I think we got the best pricing possible at the highest level of quality that we're building at. We're building at a very high level of quality. So I think we got a great project. The rents have come up from the west, but just 2 years ago, we couldn't get any bank or appraiser to say that we could get $1.50 a square foot. And now we're at the west, we're approaching if I look at the last 20 leases we signed there, we're getting up close to $1.70. I think we're at $1.78 on this deal because we're saying this market's going to. We created the foundation for value, and we're building value going forward. So we think we're going to do even better than the West when these units are completed. We firmly believe that. That's why we're investing the money, and that's what we've used in the projection. So, but even though the rents are now up at around $1.78 in our pro forma, it's still not enough to create enough net income to justify the investment. If I didn't have to pay anybody for their money, if I didn't pay the bank any interest, and if I didn't have to pay investors any return, I could make it work. But unfortunately, I have to do that. So what they're saying in their letter is rents are coming up, but until in the market today, until you get your rents up to between $2 and $2.25 a square foot, you have a very difficult time just doing a private development. So I did a project recently. I completed a project in Wauwatosa over in the research park, almost exactly the same size. My average rents there are $2.19 a square foot. And that project worked without any public participation because the market supported, rents that were several $100s a month higher than the rents we're going to get here. But here, we're not there yet. We're getting there. And our goal is that every time another deal gets done in West Dallas, that it gets, that you went from 16 million down to 9 million. The next deal, you're saying, okay, we don't want to even spend the 9 million, we want to spend less. And you're going to get to the point where you're going to, you're going to get yourselves into the money, but we're just not there yet.
Thank you. Question?
Mr. Chair, I was going to make a comment. I guess I agree with what Mr. Bonnet is saying, is he could build a cheaper building with lower rents without our help. We don't want that. We want high quality, high value apartment buildings and citizens. That's what we're going to get. That's how we get there. I'd like to see us at the point where the CBD can dissolve rather than the Boyd Road housing stuff. We don't have to work with developers anymore. They're just going to be knocking on the door and saying, this is what we want. Well, at least have less work to do. Let me put it that way.
Right. Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? Comments?
Bob, do you want to come up and say anything else? Or?
No, go ahead.
Well, I guess we've been working very closely with the staff and staff's consultants, SP Friedman and Ellers, and we've gone through all sorts of different machinations on this. But I think the overall goal that we heard back from the city's team was, at this time, we don't want to do any more loans. We don't want to do any more grants. We just want to do this MRO, municipal revenue obligation. And that basically is paid for predominantly, not completely in this case, but predominantly by the property taxes that we generate. So there's a nice match in terms of pay as you go versus at the West we had all this upfront stuff. And you could see in the Ellers documents that at some point along the way, that loan's got to be paid back. Fire's got to be paid back. The city's got to be made whole. So, we did. So the staff's direction was we don't want to load onto that. We want to close that out. We're a little bit against the wall right now. Not in a bad way, but the comment was made on the screen about the TIF extending further, and actually, what's happening. The TIF was formed in 2016. We're starting in 2022. So the TIF doesn't, I don't automatically get 27 years from 2022. I lost the first 6 years, of time frame because the TIF was formed and we weren't able to get going. So you're still within the 27 years from start to finish. And, if every project does better and taxes keep on going up, heaven forbid, the finance director, but taxes have a way of going up, and and the TIF district performs better, and the city's profit participations continue to kick in, then I think things are going to look pretty darn good. So we're not extending the TIF. We're using the 27 years that was originally available. We're just starting later. The other, a couple other comments. One is that we still have this opportunity zone designation, and the benefits of that are kind of burning off every year. So this year is the last year of a certain benefit that I've got to get this thing closed before the end of the year. Not only because I'm spending hundreds of thousands of dollars improving the site right now, which I got to get back into the bucket, but also because the opportunity zone legislation, it'll change next year. And because the 2020 census data is going to be taken into consideration. And we may, depending upon how this census tract plays out, we may lose some of our opportunity zone census tracts. I have no idea, how that transition happens, but it will happen next year. So it's important to get every opportunity zone deal done that you can get done, before the end of 21, which is why we've been pushing on this one so hard. So I think that's just important to know that we've got to get it going because the TIF doesn't wait for us, and the opportunity zone legislation isn't going to wait for us either. And the census is done for 2020, and we're all going to have to live with those results in another year. But the only other thing I think is worthwhile mentioning, two things, because I always have too much to mention. I apologize. I elongate your meetings sometimes. But one thing is that the assessed value of this one piece of the SONA site is equal to the total assessed value that we originally projected for the whole site. So on our original plan, we didn't have 110 units of housing. All we had was 100% retail, and we had a grocery store. And grocery stores are kind of notorious for having pretty low assessed values. So this project alone, in terms of our first vision for the site, creates all the assessed value, all the development value that we had thought we'd get out of the site. And then, when you look at this now in terms of, okay, when's the next piece going to happen? When's the retail happen? Well, I'll tell you, I was out on the site at 1 o'clock today with the two owners of Valentine Coffee, and we're out there looking at what's going on the site. But as I explained to Patrick and Sean, several times, I said, think of this thing as a train on I got to get the train out of the station, and I got a locomotive on the screen, and then right behind it, I got my boxcars, which are the two phases of Maker's Row. And it's 30,000 square feet of retail, which is a lot of retail space. And I have commitments on 22,500 square feet. I've either got a handshake, a signed agreement, or an agreement with Valentine, for instance. But we have people ready to go on that. And so as soon as we get this thing done, we got to do that deal because I'm spending money on it. And then the caboose, if you will, of the train is that lot 4. And we know that the city wants to encourage the rapid development of Lot 4. So, we understand that goal. And if we ultimately have to decouple the caboose and put it on a separate track, we can do that, and we can give the city more latitude and more control over that. If there's someone coming along that's got a good development proposal, we don't have a specific proposal for that piece yet. We got our hands full with what we've got. It is a very complicated. This looks simple on the screen. It is very complicated what's going on out there right now. So I think overall, if we ever get the decision on what's going on down in the Higgins corner, we got the whole train, we got the whole thing moving, and we got all the balls in the air right now, and we just got to bring a couple down so we can put them down, so we can bring the other ones in, and then get the Lot 4 done. So it's all good news. The faster we push and the faster we go, the better off we're going to be, because construction costs are not going to go down. They keep on going up. So we got to just keep this thing moving. And I think we've got a very well vetted proposal that your consultants and your staff have been through any number of times and have fly-specced it pretty darn well.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add, besides the development terms that we're seeking for outlined tonight, approval in terms of the concept, the other thing that we can talk about in closed session is the developer's request to start putting in footings and foundations on the site. Now, our goal is to close by December 15th.
Well, that's when I want to close my financing, but if
Right.
if there are other things that had to happen to allow that to happen, if we really pushed to get into the ground because we saw this good weather. We literally looked forward and said, we think we better build to get this thing done so we can build through the winter, or else we're going to be in a mud pile out there if we wait. And thank God we just had 3 weeks of some of the best weather, and these guys are just, the whole pad is there ready for the apartment building to be started. It's done already. The pad is done. The pond is dug.
Guess we need an agreement.
Yeah. So before I lose any more leverage by spending any more money on land I don't own, I'd like to be able to get going. And if I literally had to close on that land, we haven't even recorded the CSM yet because we've been waiting on the Higgins thing. If that modifies the CSM, we're gonna have to respect that and figure that one out. But we're ready to go. I mean, the contractor is chomping at the bit. I have not closed my construction loan, but we're negotiating loan documents right now. We believe we've raised just about all the equity that we need, so we're fired up and ready to go on that, and we're fired up and we're not quite ready to go on Makers Row, but it's one car of the train at a time here, but that's next.
So we think in the coming weeks we'll have the framework of the development agreement in paper. Right now it's like a red line version that you're circulating with your attorney, but we don't have that done yet. But we have the outline that we presented here tonight of what that document would be.
And this time the documentation is aided by the fact that we can take the West documents and redline them, so we're not creating documents from scratch. So that's actually moving along very quickly.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Chair, follow-up questions. You have a successful model on the north side, and that's worked well. And you've got larger units on the north side than you're going to have on the south. Why did you, if you will, dumb down the size of the units on the south?
Well, what we did, so on the north side, we have 177 units. I'd have to think about what percentage of those are the smaller units, the one bedrooms or studio units. When we leased that project up, if we had another 100 one bedroom and studio units, I could have built 277 units. But I didn't have them. But that's where all the demand is right now. And the people living there, you got a lot of younger people, average age is 28 years old. So it's a little more than just first out of school, but a lot of younger people that want to live alone, they want a one bedroom or they want a studio, because as rents have gone up per square foot, I mean, they don't want to put any more out of pocket than they have to. But the two bedroom units there went a little slower, and when you look at how much rent you get on a small unit versus how much rent you get on a larger unit, if I built all two bedrooms, I couldn't come close to making this project work. Mm-hmm. Just because the economics are so different. And there just is not as much demand for two-bedroom units in the marketplace. There are some people downtown that are building 100% one-bedrooms or studios, and that's all they build. Out here, we wanted to build some two-bedroom and three-bedroom units in so that we had a little bit more of a mix. But it really is given by what's the demand in the market. And based on those different unit sizes, each type of unit has a little bit different feasibility associated with it. The smaller units are much more feasible and allow us to make the package much tighter economically. The larger units, they don't pencil out as well, and you essentially clear less money on those units, and that ends up stressing the financing of the whole project out if you try to build all larger units.
And finally, on the south side, you mentioned you got 22,000 square feet of retail ready to go. Why don't you put one of those box cars on the track and start working on it?
That's where, well, we are. We have, both buildings are designed. One is approved, both buildings being Phase 1 and Phase 2.
They do have plan commission approval.
We have Plan Commission approval already on the Phase 1 building.
But is construction started?
And no, because we don't have a development agreement on that yet. So we have to come back now and get that development agreement done. And we got documents lined up galore. We just got to push them through. So we are there, though. I mean, where you wanted to be 2 years ago when you told me you wanted me to move on this thing, and I promised you I would, we moved on it. We lost a little bit of momentum in 2020 because of COVID, but, be that as it may, we're ready for the whole thing now. We're ready to move the whole thing along.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay through the meeting, but eventually we're going to go into closed session. So
Tell me to get out.
not yet. Not yet.
I want to hear one of the
There's
other
more stuff going on.
I
Just
don't know. I don't actually.
You want to
I'm here for one
hold
of the other
to
items.
closed session?
Yeah, we'll hold item 2 to close after closed session.
All right, we'll go to item number 3, resolution. Excuse me, Jim, go
I
ahead.
just have one question. Lot 4, it was mentioned that it was going to be used for rainwater and so on, a pond. I assume temporary?
No.
No.
how much of it, though?
This, just a small corner of the site. This would actually become kind of like an amenity in a way, landscaped and rain garden type of there. And then you could put housing or some other type of use overlooking that stormwater and that. Okay. But we're not there yet in terms of that construction, and we have to absorb this and all the retail here before we can get to that particular site. So.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Alderman Weigel.
Patrick, is that a good approximation of how much that could be for stormwater and how much is going to
Yes.
be buildable? That's a decent approximation.
Yeah,
And it might not be that layout, I get it. It could be sideways or whatever.
I mean, lot 4 is essentially 1 point. This is the CSM, map. So this lot would be 1.2, and I think the stormwater is in this particular corner, like from that point up. I'm just estimating that size, and then the rest would be a development pad.
Right. Okay. For whatever the market needs at the time.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? If
Thank
not,
you.
We'll continue with item 3, resolution authorizing the sale portions of 6600 West Mitchell to Mark Higgins, owner of the property at 6620 West Mitchell. Patrick, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, just to help frame the discussion, over the last 2 years or so, we've been in discussions with Higgins Tower as a company. They are the neighbors to our Lot 4 that we just discussed. They have an easement that runs, you can kind of see it here, from this door to Mitchell. So this particular curb cut will disappear, and it'll be realigned with the development. It'll be more to the east. But they have an easement, like I said, to be able to access Mitchell. It says the easement says automobile, the most direct route to Mitchell. But their business has semis that come delivering items. They also have larger trucks that access this western-facing door. You can see it on this particular picture right there. So their lot line is 20 feet from their building facade, so 20 feet from there. So that's really hard to maneuver truck with trailer into that door, and we understand that. We've been in conversations with them. How can we improve this area, the site, their particular site, and deal with this easement? So we offered to sell them, and I think the picture will help show this best. So this is the proposed new private drive in towards the Sona development. So here's our lot 4. So this is the private drive. We said we would sell them 16 feet, and I think I've outlined this to the CDA before. So from their lot line, an additional 16 feet. So then they would have 36 feet from their building to a proposed new lot line. And then there would be a landscape bed, sidewalk, and then curb here within the drive. Our requirement is that they would put a fence along that property line to screen in order so that we have, you don't have a loading dock necessarily looking out from this new development at Lot 4 eventually. Now, they showed a plan through our discussions about adding a loading dock. And we also worked with them about how to get access to this western door, and we had one that came through this private drive. Well, semis coming in through this route didn't seem like something that they were receptive to. And also, as a development, would pose challenges as well. So now we eliminate parking because semis have to come in and out of here and swing in and out or back in to that door. So they came back with a proposal of adding on a loading dock. Now, I don't know if they're there yet in terms of deciding if they're going to have a loading dock or not. But we have to provide access to Mitchell per the easement. So if they agree on the land sale, so tonight is asking for permission for us to negotiate, sell them the 16 feet of land if they accept that, and then we have a release of that easement. If they don't release that easement, we still have to provide a curb cut because of that's the easements is to Mitchell. Now, how that's done, we're going to work with their attorneys in consultation with our city attorney, and we're trying to find an agreeable terms. But when we proposed the sale of land, it was around 2,800 square feet. I think it's actually 2,808 square feet. We said there's some incurred costs for design, stormwater. Overall, if you put that in, then the land sale, we're around $38,108 for the sale then. We would want to rezone their site. The land, that 16 feet of land is zoned commercial. Their site is zoned manufacturing. We'd like to have that all zoned commercial. So we're probably going to start that process as well. We also want to come back to see a complete plan for their landscaping eventually. On their site, their asphalt is breaking up. There's no landscaping on their site. We'd like to see that cleaned up. So we have an overall campus here with the Mandel development, Sona, and that it all looks good within this area. So, and we're worked to release that easement, that we work together. And that's what we outlined to them. We need to get a survey done for that 16 feet. The other issue that exists, and this kind of came up, we stumbled on this in late summer, is that there's a lateral that connects right where they proposed their loading dock, and it goes kind of southwest and connects into our Lot 4. You can kind of see it here under the proposed road. It's not going to impact any development, but it goes onto private land, all right? So it's going off of their parcel through our private land and then accesses the storm in the street. So it might be beneficial for them to look at, alternative type of situation. Now, we're not recommending that in any way, but in terms of their long-range planning of resurfacing their parking lot, putting a new curb cut in, that might be something you might want to look at before you do all that. And otherwise, what would happen is this gets abandoned in place, and then a new one is installed at some point. So that's just an issue, and we can talk about more of that in closed session. But on tonight's agenda, we do have another item related to providing funding to put in an apron, right? So the width of that apron is still a question. We have to provide access to Mitchell per the easement. So if they say we don't want the 16 feet over there in that southeast corner, we have to provide some sort of access to Mitchell. Now, we're going to have an issue because if they don't accept the 16, I don't know how they're going to access their western door, right? So there's some negotiation that's ongoing here on this easement. In terms of all the big parts of this project, this is very important to get this easement released so that we can sell and get this access put in. So we've been dealing with it for a long time. It's still ongoing, and we think we have a solution where we put this apron in and then we provide the 16 feet, and now they have access to Mitchell. That's pretty much where we're at with that easement issue. Gladly answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Since this area where this facility is a focus of a great deal of development and opportunity, have we switched our direction at all and thought about approaching these folks to buy their building and therefore create a larger development opportunity?
I think we've had some conversations with them. They want to be there. We asked them that question early on a couple years ago. They didn't show any interest in wanting to sell at that point. They put some money into the property inside, painted the floors. I mean, if you go inside, it is very elegant inside. It's a manufacturing type of use. So, and there's this. The person that runs, Mark Higgins, his dad started the business. His dad bought the building. This has been their home. So there's a little bit of sentimental value to them for the property. So we're kind of working with that particular feeling. So, and at the same time, we had to get the rest of the site developed and not prepared yet to acquire additional property. It's something we can continue to consider.
Sounds like they like being in West Alpha.
They like being in the neighborhood. They like what's going on. We want them to fit in well with the overall development plans. But in terms of the way it's laid out right now, could it be eventually discussed if everything goes well? We can maybe look at that. But at this time, we were going to work with them. That was the plan.
Any other questions, comments? No? You want to hold this one also for closed session?
Sure. And then the next one relates to it. You can read it, and then I'll discuss it.
Okay, item 4, resolution to approve single source contract with Payne and Dolan for installation of curb cut apron for egress and egress at 6600 Street in the amount of $20,000.
Right. Mr. Chairman, what this is we need to have some budget authority to address this. It could most likely will come in much cheaper. There's a way where we can work with the contractor that's putting in the drive to also put in the apron on this site, and it could come in much lower than the $20,000. I'm just asking for some budget authority based on some initial calculations in order so that we can address that easement issue.
I'd move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
We're not going to talk about this in closed session.
We don't. If you wanted to discuss
We
it in
can
closed
hold
session,
it
it's
if you
fine.
want
Yeah.
it. Otherwise,
Prefer to, if we could.
all right. We're going to hold item 4 for closed session. We go to item number 5, resolution to approve acquisition of 6424 to 2600 West Greenfield and 1300 South 65th Street with tax income district number 5, 6 Points Farmer Market redevelopment area. Patrick, you have the floor.
So the property that we're discussing tonight is referred to as the Spot, and there's a parking lot adjacent to that. This is located within the original TIF number 5 location, the 6 Points TIF, 6 Points Farmers Market area. I highlighted it in particular yellow. It's mainly this parcel in the little parking lot here behind it. It has an assessment value of around $227,000 today. One of the things that we can discuss about it much further in closed session is the TIF has a fund balance and available to pay for the acquisition costs. There is an accepted offer that we have from the CDA to the property owner of $375,000 to acquire the spot and the parking lot. That is fully, it looks like the TIF can absorb that cost based on the fund balance, and we're recommending that we proceed with that. Now, if you want to talk about the long-range plan and how this fits into things, we'll discuss that in closed session.
On this item, I'd move approval because the sooner we get this, we're going to make some money. And we're going to assign somebody, I'm sure, to be the entertainment director.
All right, we'll hold that too.
Sean?
We'll hold item number 5
Yeah.
also. We go to number 6. Resolution to approve a contract with Wicklow Development Corporation for temporary repairs and replacements of windows at 6771 West National Avenue, located within tax increment district number 14, in the amount up to $10,000. Patrick.
Sean?
Thank you. Yeah, if you recall, I believe the last meeting or the meeting prior, we had discussed that we had the roof repaired on the building. I think it cost about $4,000, and that there was that windstorm that took place a month or two ago, and the whole roof was pulled up insulation was out. And so we had that repaired, and this is sort of the next phase of some of the windows have just been broken over time, and some of them in that storm. And so we had an estimate, we got an estimate for approximately $6,800 to have all the windows temporarily repaired. And so we think with winter coming and such, that might be an important thing to get done. So we have an amount not to exceed $10,000 just in case the contractor runs into anything else.
So move.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Resolution passes. Item number 7, resolution to approve contract with MRI Software LLC in the amount of $7,976.25 to convert housing software to a cloud-based system to manage the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes.
It's favored by IT. It's good. Keep moving.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, quickly on the development initiatives under item 8. We continue to market the Kearney and Trucker building, as I mentioned, the windows. There's different people that have expressed interest, and we continue to work on those avenues. The hardest thing is also, the financing of such an initiative with so many different types of uses inside. So we continue to work on that aspect. The neighboring property, Oak Brewery, we closed on it. The CDA owned that site, so we sold a portion of 67 Star West Mitchell and 67 Star West National. That one was sold. That was 0.47 acres, and then the Perfect Screw building was sold for the brewery. So if you've gone by, they've painted the site, they pulled plumbing permits, and they have submitted their building plans. Now, most of the outside work won't occur until spring, because why would you put landscaping in now? They are going to do most of that, but they're getting the interior done so they could commence brewing, they said, by January. So, they're on a fast track. They're putting a lot of their own sweat equity in. In fact, their estimate was $30,000 to paint the building, and they ended up renting one of those lifts and bought a paint machine themselves and painted the whole building for around $7,000. So I like their fiscal sense and the way they're moving the project along as quick as they can. Some of you were at the groundbreaking of the Home 2 Suites. It was just mentioned before, footings are going in. So this is very exciting. In fact, I was at the Hampton Inn, and someone asked me where the Gauge was, which is adjacent to this site, that many of the hotels in this area are benefiting from what's happening at the Gauge with their weddings. So having a hotel in this area is going to be a very marketable type of development. And then we also, you might have gone by the 6610 West Greenfield Avenue project, the Reunion. It's open. If you haven't been in there, please stop in and check it out. Very, very nice project. I think my kids eventually will make it up to that game room and empty my checkbook. But it's a nice addition for families into the community. So here's some of the pictures of the inside. And then Motor Casting, you have the demolition permit in hand. We just want to get through the grading of that project a little bit and discuss that with them. Their plan outlined the framework of the foundry, said leveled, but there's a large retaining wall on the outside of the site that is really interesting to us, if that's staying, if it's going. How is this? There's a significant grade difference between the Hollis Chalmers site, this site, and then 65th Street. So we just want to make sure that fits into the project. And then the long-range plan is to see how we can facilitate development in this area. That's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
Wait, Mr.
Is there a place on this agenda, Mr. Chair or Patrick, to ask about the crime lab? Could that fit into one of these subjects?
It's not something yet. It's out there as a project. The state did an RFP, but it's not something for public discussion yet. We don't have any update on that.
In closed session, could you put this on the agenda?
Put it at a future closed session, yeah.
If you would, please.
All right, we'll go into closed session. For agenda items 2, 3, 4, 5, the committee may convene in closed session for the provisions of section 19.85/1/E of the state statutes for the purpose of delivering, investing public funds whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The committee may convene in open sessions after completion of the closed session to consider the balance of its agenda. Could we have roll call, please?
I move we go into closed session.
Okay.
Second.
We got the roll
You want me to go through? Yep. Don Niemer,
Yes.
Alderman Weigel,
Aye.
Alderman Haas,
Aye.
Jared Motter,
Aye.
Jim Lozinski.
Aye.
Yes.
We're now in closed session.
There.